Today, I have an advanced English fluency masterclass to help you improve all areas of your English. In this masterclass, you're going to improve your vocabulary, listening, pronunciation, grammar, and speaking. Welcome back to JForrest English. Of course, I'm Jennifer. Now let's get started. In section 1, you'll learn advanced vocabulary by completing a quiz. You'll see a sentence with a blank, and you need to choose the correct word to complete the sentence. Question 1. The team's efforts have been with periods of intense focus followed by days of inactivity. The correct answer is B, sporadic. Sporadic. This means occurring at irregular intervals or only in a few places scattered or isolated. For example, the power outages were sporadic throughout the day. So this means they didn't occur continuously, they occurred sporadically at different intervals, different times, but not continuously. Don't worry about taking notes because I summarize everything in a free lesson PDF. You can find the link in the description. Let's listen to some real-world examples.
I describe myself as a sporadic meditator.
We've definitely done it in, kind of sporadic one-off.
That's when we get sporadic results. That's when we get haphazard results. That's when we get inconsistency. That's when we get people that will compromise their values.
Question 2, his curiosity led him to read every book on the subject. The correct answer is C, insatiable. Listen to that pronunciation, insatiable, insatiable. This means impossible to satisfy. For example, I have an insatiable appetite for learning English. Notice the use of the word appetite because insatiable is commonly used with feelings of hunger, impossible to satisfy your hunger. So do you have an insatiable appetite for learning English? Put that's right, put that's right in the comments. Now let's listen to some real world examples.
But these insects aren't always so insatiable.
Because I was just an insatiable learner, I knew I wanted to be some kind of an ist. I went from marine biologist to paleontologist to...
It's too small to satisfy such insatiable appetites.
Question 3. When its first product failed, the company had to a new idea. The correct answer is C, pivot, pivot. This means to make a fundamental change in approach or strategy. We pivoted and bought a condo. So this sounds like you changed your approach. First, you wanted to buy a house or maybe even rent a house, but then you pivoted, you changed your approach, and you bought a condo. Let's listen to some real-world examples.
And the big pivot is about a deep change in the priorities of business.
Now, some people call that pivot. So some of my colleagues over at Accenture actually call pivot to the future.
They're trying to think, how can we pivot or do things differently?
Question 4. The scientists knew the theory was false and worked to it. The correct answer is A, debunk. Listen to that pronunciation, D, debunk. This means to expose the falseness of a myth, idea, or belief. For example, I need to debunk the idea that you can't improve your speaking alone because you absolutely can. Do you agree with that? Do you want to help me debunk this myth? If you do, put that's right in the comments, and let's listen to some real-world examples.
It's time to debunk them once and for all.
So I wanted to write a book to try to debunk a lot of myths about physical activity and about exercise.
If I can't debunk it, if I can't falsify it, if there's no way to test it, then how will we ever know it's true?
Question 5, she appreciated his comments even though they were difficult to hear. The correct answer is B, candid, candid. This means truthful and straightforward. Another word for it is frank. His frank response. You could say her candid answers, her honest, straightforward. Her candid answers impressed the hiring manager. Let's listen to some real-world examples.
They're also candid. They're honest, vulnerable, and give lots of feedback.
They said, let facts be submitted to a candid world.
The solution I found to that was to be very candid with my reader.
How are you doing so far? Question 6, her analysis of the situation helped resolve the issue quickly. The correct answer is C, astute. Notice that end, oot, astute, astute. This means you're able to understand a situation quickly and see how to take advantage of it. For example, she made an astute observation about the company's strategy. Let's listen to some real-world examples.
Yeah, I think that's actually a very astute observation.
Mahatma Gandhi actually was a very astute politician.
I mean, that's really fascinating and politically astute, obviously.
Question 7, she placed her belongings around the room without any thought. The correct answer is C, haphazardly. This is fun to say, haphazardly, haphazardly. This means in a manner lacking any obvious organization, and notice it's an adverb. For example, the books were piled haphazardly on the table. So it sounds like at any moment those books could fall because they were piled haphazardly. Let's listen to some real-world examples.
The city that was built haphazardly along the river wasn't equipped to house more people.
But it's done haphazardly and typically ineffectively.
And he's not just throwing them around haphazardly.
Question 8, their silence was taken as consent to proceed. The correct answer is A, tacit, tacit. You won't hear that final T in spoken English, tacit, tacit. This means understood or implied, but without being stated. We often use this to describe agreements. There was a tacit agreement to keep the situation private. So this means that nobody formally said, we will keep the situation private. It was understood without saying it. It was a tacit agreement. Let's listen to some real-world examples.
A lot of our knowledge is tacit.
It reflects both explicit and tacit racism.
But isn't there a signal, a tacit signal, from the retirements of all these congressional officials?
Question 9, she experienced the adventure through her friend's vivid descriptions. The correct answer is C, vicariously. Notice that K, vicariously, vicariously. This means experience through the activities of other people rather than by doing something yourself. For example, his love of travel was fulfilled vicariously through documentaries and movies. So this sounds like he didn't travel himself. He was exposed to travel on TV, documentaries, and movies. Let's listen to some real-world examples.
Maybe you can kind of vicariously enjoy that.
I get to enjoy that vicariously and maybe give them some guidance, right?
I mean, vicariously, we all went there.
Question 10, I can't seem to, the reason behind her sudden resignation. The correct answer is C, fathom, fathom. This means to understand someone or why someone acts as they do. We often use this in the negative. She couldn't fathom why he made such a decision. This means she doesn't understand why or how he made the decision. Let's listen to some real-world examples.
I want to talk to you about that love so deep, only a mother can fathom it.
We never fully know God's purpose. We can never fully fathom His amazing grace.
Can you fathom that? You're doing such a great job. Question 11, the teacher began to the student for not completing the assignment. The correct answer is A, berate. Berate. This means to scold or criticize someone angrily. The client berated the intern for spelling the company name wrong on the posters. Let's listen to some real-world examples.
They in fact berate it. They call it stupid and worse, believe me.
It was shocking to see him berate Sergeant Pagani in front of us.
Okay, is that a question or you just want to berate me?
Question 12, their joy over the victory was fading quickly as the next challenge appeared. The correct answer is A, ephemeral, ephemeral, ephemeral. This means lasting for a very short time. For example, the beauty of the sunset was ephemeral, disappearing within minutes. Let's listen to some real-world examples.
They produce ephemeral rain roots that quickly take up the available water.
What's immediate and ephemeral seems to dominate our lives, our economy, and our politics.
They're kind of ephemeral, but yet not entirely gone.
Question 13, they offered free snacks in an attempt to the angry crowd. The correct answer is A, placate. Notice that K, placate, placate. This means to make someone less angry or hostile. For example, the intern tried to placate the client by offering to work late. So the intern tried to make the client less angry. Let's listen to some real-world examples.
Now, I'm not saying placate him or blow sunshine at him, but I'm saying when it comes from, if he is doing a good job and is coming from an authentic place, let him know.
Pulling an object of art to placate part of the public.
They passed some of his reforms and tried to placate the people.
Question 14, it was how similar their voices sounded over the phone. The correct answer is C, uncanny. Uncanny. This means strange or mysterious in an unsettling way. He has an uncanny ability to pick a winner. Let's listen to some real-world examples.
Professors have an uncanny knack for remembering what they've read, whether it's by another professional or by a student.
General Lee was a brilliant tactician who had kind of an uncanny ability in individual battles.
Well, I have an uncanny ability to honk off people on all sides of issues.
Question 15. Their meeting at the party was pure, as neither knew the other would be there. The correct answer is C, happenstance. This is also fun to say. Happenstance, happenstance. This is the same as coincidence, something that happens by chance, not planned. For example, by sheer happenstance, my neighbor and I were both traveling to Paris on the same day. Again, this is a coincidence. My neighbor and I did not plan to travel to Paris on the same day. It was sheer happenstance, and sheer emphasizes the coincidence, emphasizes the happenstance. Let's listen to some real-world examples.
I didn't just get here by happenstance. I get here because I'm the product of people who were humble enough to not see me and write me off as a villain, but embrace me as a would-be hero in the making.
You know, maybe just by happenstance, I happen to be a little bit more embodied. And I felt a certain kind of way about that.
I mean, some of it honestly is happenstance.
Are you enjoying this lesson? If you are, then I want to tell you about the Finally Fluent Academy. This is my premium training program where we study native English speakers from TV, the movies, YouTube, and the news so you can improve your listening skills of fast English, expand your vocabulary with natural expressions, and learn advanced grammar easily. Plus, you'll have me as your personal coach. You can look in the description for the link to learn more, or you can go to my website and click on Finally Fluent Academy. Now let's continue with our lesson. So how did you do with that quiz? Share your score in the comments and let's move on to section 2 where you'll improve your listening skills of fast English so you can understand native speakers in the real world. You'll hear a sentence 3 times and you need to write down what you hear in the comments. After, you'll learn how to use your new expression fluently. Are you ready? I'll say it 3 times. Careful with the blender, it's a little finicky. Careful with the blender, it's a little finicky. Careful with the blender, it's a little finicky. I said careful with the blender, it's a little finicky. First, let's talk about the pronunciation changes. You can see here, this is a contraction, it is, it's a little, it's a little. So we pronounce that as a d, a soft D, little, d, little, d, little, little. Now some native speakers will drop those sounds entirely and it will just sound like lil, lil. And then we connect it with a little, a little, a little. I personally pronounce the soft D's, a little, a little. It's a little finicky. Finicky is probably a new word in your vocabulary, so let's focus on the sounds. Fin, ick, e. Now we're going to put the syllable stress on the first sound. Fin, finicky, finicky, finicky. What does this mean? Well, finicky, this is an adjective, to be finicky. And this means that something requires a lot of attention to detail. So the example is using a blender, a common household appliance that's easy to use. But if this blender is finicky, it means that to use it successfully, you have to really pay attention to detail. Maybe you have to make sure the lid is on in just a precise way or press the buttons in a very specific way in order for the blender to operate. Likely because the blender is very old or there's a problem with the blender. It's finicky. It's a little finicky.
Thank you for being so finicky with me.
These machines are really finicky.
It's being finicky.
Now let's talk about grammar for a second because notice the sentence started with careful, careful. Technically, you need the verb be careful, be careful. But native speakers will commonly drop verbs when they're not required to understand the sentence. So if I said to a native speaker, careful, they're not going to be confused because there's no verb be. They understand what it means without the verb. Careful, be careful, they're both correct, and a native speaker will most likely just say careful. Let's try this again with another listening exercise. I'll say it 3 times. She's a finicky eater. She's a finicky eater. She's a finicky eater. I said she's a finicky eater. This was easy for you, right? Because it's the same word, finicky, finicky. So hopefully you could clearly hear that now. But the meaning in this context is different. We're not saying she's an eater that requires a lot of attention to detail. A finicky eater is an eater who is difficult to please. Now, why would an eater be difficult to please? Because there are probably many things that she doesn't like, or she has a lot of specific preferences about how her food is prepared. This adjective is commonly used to describe children because most children are finicky eaters. If you have kids, you can probably relate to this, and you were once a child. So I don't know about you, but as for me, I was definitely a finicky eater when I was a kid. I only liked about 5 things, and there was a long list of things I didn't like. If you can relate to that, put me too in the comments, me too, so I know that you were also a finicky eater.
Good luck with my finicky appetite.
Let's try this again. I'll say this sentence 3 times. The audience was hanging on her every word. The audience was hanging on her every word. The audience was hanging on her every word. I said the audience was hanging on her every word. For pronunciation, notice how on her sounds like honor, 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 because we frequently drop the H sound on her, and then I connect those 2 words together, honor. I can also connect that with every, honor every, honor every, honor every. What does this mean? To hang on one's every word, this is an expression. And it means that you listen very closely, very attentively, very carefully. Now with expressions, you need to make sure you have every single word. So here, it's on her every word. So if you said the audience was hanging on her word and you forgot to use every, it wouldn't make sense. Because with expressions, you have to use every single word of the expression. So if you are listening to this lesson very closely, you're taking notes, you're actively participating, then you, my friend, are hanging on my every word. But if, as you're watching this video, you're also checking your email or making dinner or doing something else, then you're not hanging on my every word. So I hope you're hanging on my every word. If you are, put that in the comments. Jennifer, I'm hanging on your every word. And that means you're paying very close attention to what I'm saying.
You're hanging on his every word.
But he hangs on your every word.
They all hang on my every word.
Let's try this again. I'll say it 3 times. She has me wrapped around her finger. She has me wrapped around her finger. She has me wrapped around her finger. I said, she has me wrapped around her finger. For pronunciation, notice wrapped. The ED is pronounced as a soft T, wrapped. Wrapped, wrapped, wrapped around. Now, because I'm combining this with around, I can take that sound wrapped around, and I can combine them together. Remember I said we commonly get rid of the H sound on her. So I can do that here as well, and then I can connect it together. Wrapped arounder. To have someone wrapped around your finger, or we commonly say little finger, wrapped around your finger, wrapped around your little finger, there's no difference. So little is optional in this expression. And this is when you have complete control over someone. This happens in situations where perhaps this guy is totally in love with this girl and he's just infatuated with her. And because of that, she has complete control over him. And no matter what she says, he just does it. So he does her laundry for her. He drives her to work every day. She has him wrapped around her little finger.
I'll have you wrapped around my finger in no time.
Please, I've got Dr. Reed wrapped around my finger.
Boy, Archie, Veronica's got you wrapped around her little finger.
Let's do this one more time. I'll say it 3 times. I can't get anything past you. I can't get anything past you. I can't get anything past you. I said, I can't get anything past you. For pronunciation, notice we have get anything. So we have a T between 2 vowels. So I can pronounce that as get anything, get anything, get anything. And then I'll combine those 2 sounds together. I can't get anything past you. Now, what does this mean? To get something past someone, or you can also say to get something by someone. They're exactly the same. There's just an option. You can use past or by. This is when someone doesn't notice something important. But notice in my example, I can't get anything by you. I used it in the negative. Let's imagine an example. Let's say a customer is in a restaurant and that customer ordered an expensive bottle of French wine. But the restaurant tried to serve him cheap American wine. Now, because I can't get anything by you, it means that you notice the details when they're important. So it means that you noticed that this isn't the wine you ordered. And you'll say, wait, this isn't the wine I ordered. And then the waiter could say, I can't get anything by you.
Can't get anything past this guy.
Can't get anything past you, can I?
Never could get anything past you, can I?
Amazing job improving your listening skills of fast English and also adding these advanced expressions to your speech. Now let's improve your pronunciation. Let's do an imitation exercise. I'm going to say each sentence again 3 times, and I want you to repeat each sentence out loud so you can imitate my pronunciation. Let's do that now. Careful with the blender, it's a little finicky. Careful with the blender, it's a little finicky. Careful with the blender, it's a little finicky. She's a finicky eater. She's a finicky eater. She's a finicky eater. The audience was hanging on her every word. The audience was hanging on her every word. The audience was hanging on her every word. She has me wrapped around her finger. She has me wrapped around her finger. She has me wrapped around her finger. I can't get anything past you. I can't get anything past you. I can't get anything past you. Amazing job. Now let's move on to section 3, where you'll learn everything you need to know about modal verbs. And at the end, you'll complete a quiz to make sure you really know modal verbs. First, let's talk about modal verbs of ability. Can, you know this one already. She can speak 4 languages fluently. Or, I can see the stars tonight. Notice for the structure, we have our subject, then we have the modal verb, and what comes next? The base verb. I can see. The base verb. I can see the stars tonight. You can't say, you can't say, I can to see the stars tonight. Using the infinitive is grammatically incorrect. So remember that structure, subject, modal, base verb. Don't worry about taking notes because I summarize everything in a free lesson PDF. You can find the link in the description. You can use could for past ability. When I was younger, I could run fast. Now, because you use could, which is past ability, this means that today I can't run fast, or I can't run as fast as I could in the past. Notice I use the negative and a contraction. Today I can't run as fast. So the structure here is subject, modal, not, often formed as a contraction, so pay attention to those contractions, and then the base verb. I can't run as fast today. Also remember that modals are not conjugated. They're not conjugated with the subject or the time reference, so grammatically they're very easy. So don't say she can runs. You don't conjugate run with the subject she. You don't conjugate it at all. Of course, without the modal in the present simple, she runs very fast, you would conjugate it, but with the modal, she can run very fast. Let's combine these two together. When I was younger, I couldn't speak English, but now I can. I'm sure that describes you, so put yes I can, yes I can, yes I can, put that in the comments. Keep in mind that could is also the polite form of can. Could you open the window, please? Notice the sentence structure for questions. We have the modal, could, then the subject, could you, and then the base verb. Could you open the window, please? You can, of course, use can. Can you please open the window? Could sounds more formal, more polite. Notice the placement of please. It can come at the end of the sentence or after the subject. Now let's talk about permission, both asking for permission and giving permission. You can use can I leave early today? And then to answer, you can say, yes, you can, or no, you can't. I can give you permission and say you can borrow my book. In this case, may is the polite form of can. May I use your phone? Sounds more formal and polite than can I use your phone? Or to give permission, you may enter now. What about this question? May you open the window, please? What do you think about this question? This isn't natural. A native speaker would use could. Could you open the window, please? This is because may is not used with the subject you to ask for permission. With the subject you, to ask for permission, use could instead. The other subjects you can use may. May I open the window? May she open the window? May we, may they open the window? But only for you, could you open the window? Don't forget that. Let's talk about possibility, but not certainty. Might, it might rain today. Could, it could rain today. Keep in mind, there is no agreement to what percentage of certainty that might and could represent. So it might rain. What is that? Is that 40% chance of rain, 60%, 80%? There is no general agreement. It depends on how the speaker interprets it. So you would just have to ask the person, well, how likely is it? Should I bring an umbrella? And the same goes for could. I'm sure you've noticed by now that one modal can have different meanings, so don't get confused by this. I could run fast when I was young. This is used for ability. Could you open the window, please? This is the polite form of can. It could rain later. This is for possibility. So you have to look to the context to understand how the modal is being used. Let's talk about obligation, must. This sounds forceful or legally required. You must wear a seatbelt. This is either a very forceful, strong recommendation from someone like your mother, or it is legally required. You must renew your passport. This is something a flight attendant might tell you, and they do not allow you to fly because your passport is expired, and this is an obligation. Native speakers commonly use have to when we want to sound less forceful. I have to finish this by tomorrow. We have to start eating healthy. Notice the structure here. We have have to plus base verb. If you prefer, you can think of it as have plus infinitive, which is to plus base verb. Either way, don't forget the to. For lack of obligation, take have to and turn it into the negative. Don't have to. You don't have to complete this form. You do not have to, and then as a contraction, you don't have to complete this form. Or your boss could say to you, you don't have to finish the report. There's a lack of obligation. For the structure here, notice do not, don't, have to, and then base verb. Let's talk about prohibition, things that are prohibited, not allowed, often legally. You can use cannot, and as the contraction, most commonly used, can't. You can't smoke inside, that's prohibited. You must go outside, that's the obligation. You can't smoke inside, you must go outside. You can't use your phone during the exam, that's the prohibition. You must turn off your phone during the exam, that's the obligation. Cannot as one word is the correct spelling. The incorrect spelling is cannot as two words. So cannot, one word, or the contraction can't. Let's talk about must not, because this is a strong recommendation, but it is not a legal requirement. You mustn't sign the contract. This sounds more like my recommendation because I think it's a bad idea. You mustn't sign the contract. You must not sign the contract. But that isn't an obligation. If it were, I would say you can't sign the contract. You're prohibited from signing the contract. Let's talk about advice. You can use should to give and ask for advice or suggestions. You should study 5 days per week. You should eat more vegetables. You shouldn't quit your English class. You should not, you shouldn't. Ought to is used to give advice or suggestions. You ought to eat more vegetables. But ought to is not used in modern English. I remember my grandma using ought to, but I never do. If you do use it, just remember it's ought to plus base verb. You need that too. To ask for advice or suggestions, use should. Should we partner with this company? Should I stop following JForrest English? What do you think? Well, to reply, you can say, yes, you should, or no, you definitely shouldn't. Hopefully you choose that option. Let's talk about shall. So you're at a restaurant, you just finished your meal, you paid for the check, and you can say to the table, shall we go? Shall we go? And then someone at the table could reply back and say, we shall. That is the only modern usage of shall. but it is very commonly used to suggest leaving a place. Shall we go? Shall we go? So if you want to use shall, I only recommend you use it in that specific context. Let's talk about will and would because they are modal auxiliary verbs, so they have many different meanings and uses. Will can be used for spontaneous future decisions. I will help you move. And I just decided in the moment. It wasn't something I planned. I'll help you move. It can be used for predictions, often with I think. I think it will rain tomorrow. It might rain. It could rain tomorrow. We also use will for promises and commitments. I'll subscribe and I'll like this video. If you say that and you use will, you just made a commitment. So make sure you subscribe and like this video so you don't break your promise. Let's talk about would. It's used in hypothetical situations. I would go on vacation if I had more time. So just by saying I would go on vacation, I know it's a hypothetical. We use would for polite requests or offers. Would you like me to make more lessons just like this? You can say, yes, I would, or no, I wouldn't. We also use would for past habitual actions. Remember, could was for past ability, but would is for a habitual action, something you repeatedly did in the past. When I was young, I would spend hours playing in the park. I loved it because I could run really fast. So could is the past ability, but would is the habitual past action. Here's how native speakers have fun with the meaning of modal verbs. Let's say you ask me for something and you say, Jennifer, could you help me? A native could reply back and say, I could, and maybe I should, but I won't. So the questioner is using could as the polite form of can. Could you help me? But I reply, and native speaker replies as a joke, I could, because we're using it for possibility. I could help you, and maybe I should help you because it's an advice or recommendation, but I won't, which is a refusal. So now you know everything you need to know about modals. Let's quiz your knowledge. Here are the questions. Hit pause and take as much time as you need, and when you're ready, hit play to see the answers. Here are the answers. Hit pause, review the answers, and when you're ready, hit play. Let's move on to the final section. You'll learn some proven, practical, and free ways to improve your speaking every day. You'll learn how to train your brain to think and speak in English. Let's get started with the first tip. Number one, think during everyday activities. Think of all the things that you do in your everyday life that either are very routine, don't require a lot of conscious thought, or are pretty boring. For me, it would be getting showered in the morning, doing my makeup, doing my hair, and for a lot of people, it might be commuting to work. And then think of all the chores you do, doing the dishes, making your bed, all those various things that don't require conscious thought. Well, why don't you use that time to think in English? Now you might be saying or thinking in your native language perhaps, well, Jennifer, what should I think about? What can I think about? And here's the best part. In order to practice thinking in English, you just need to make very simple statements, very simple observations. You don't need to make it overly complex. You don't need to focus on certain grammar structures or vocabulary. Just look around and observe the room you're in and make a simple statement. Let's say you're brushing your teeth. As you go through that process, Now remember, you don't have to say this out loud. You can simply think in your head, but think in English. As you pick up the toothpaste, think about that. I'm picking up the toothpaste. I'm taking off the cap. I'm putting toothpaste on my toothbrush. My toothbrush is very old. I should buy a new toothbrush. The toothpaste smells minty. I never noticed the color of the toothpaste before. Now think of how boring this conversation is. In your everyday life, you would never talk so much about toothpaste, your toothbrush, or brushing your teeth, right? But you are doing this in your head to practice thinking in English. And that's just one very simple thing that you do every day, 2 times a day, maybe 3 or more times a day. Think of all the other things and how you can simply make observations about that situation or about what you see around you, and you're going to make those observations in your head in English. As a tip, you can start with simple statements. My toothbrush is old, and then take that statement and try to make it more complex. Can you change the verb tense? Can you ask a question? Can you add an adjective? So you can purposely think of ways to make it more complex as an additional exercise, but start simple and then add on. So if you're committed to trying this exercise, put toothpaste in the comments. Why not? Number 2, speak out loud. When you think in your head, that is very beneficial to train your brain to start thinking in English, to start processing sentence structure, grammar, vocabulary in English. But thinking something in your head is not the same as opening your mouth and saying the words. Once you open your mouth and say the words, it's a different activity. You're practicing your speaking skills. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, well, Jennifer, of course I want to speak. This is the one thing I want to do in English, but I don't have anyone to speak with. I live in a country where there are no native speakers. That's okay, because there are easy ways that you can practice speaking on your own. My favorite way, and native speakers use this activity as well to practice their speaking skills, my favorite way is a website called Random Question Generator. All you need to Google is Random Question Generator. And there are many different websites. I will leave my favorite websites in the description. Now, what you can do with these websites is all you do is you click the button that generates a random question. Now, what you need to do is as soon as you see that question, I want you to open your mouth and start speaking. Don't think about grammar. Don't think about vocabulary. Don't think about pronunciation. Open your mouth and start speaking. Make it your goal to speak for 1 minute on that topic. You can record yourself speaking. You can just use the voice recorder app on your phone. You can also set a timer for 1 minute if you'd like. So when that timer goes off, then you know you've spoken for that amount of time. You don't need to do that. It's just an option. Now, after, you can listen to that recording and you can think about your pronunciation, grammar, sentence structure, vocabulary, and you can think of areas to improve. However, as you're doing the exercise, you're not thinking about your English. You're just speaking. But here's the best part. Because you have already taken the time to think in English every single day. Maybe you get 5, 10, even 20 minutes of practice where you're thinking, you're observing, you're making simple observations more complex. All of that practice that you just did will help you open your mouth and get the words out. Give this activity 1 week, then 2 weeks, then 30 days. I promise you, if you do this 3 times a day for just 2 to 3 minutes, 3 times a day, in 30 days, you are going to be so impressed with your results. So if you're committed to trying this exercise, put let's go in the comments. Number 3, describe images. This is a more guided method because when you describe an image, you can think in your mind, which is absolutely beneficial. I've already mentioned why. Or you can practice speaking out loud, and instead of using a random question generator, you are going to use an image. How are you going to find an image? You can simply go to Google Images and put a random word in, like cat or dog, and choose any image. Or you can go to a website that shares free images, like Pexels, which I'll put in the description as well, and just choose one of the first images on the home page. This is an exercise that I do with my students, and they absolutely love it. And the conversations that we have, the examples that they share are so interesting as well. Now, this is an activity that I do with my students for free on YouTube, so make sure you subscribe so you know the next time that I'm hosting a speaking class. So here's an image that I used in my last speaking class, and the students shared such interesting examples. Now, all you have to do is describe this image. You can make observations about how the people look, their clothing, the background, or you can make statements about what they're doing. So in this image, you might say the man wearing an orange shirt is kneeling. Or you might say, there's an umbrella next to the man. And again, you can make simple statements more complex. There's a bright, multicolored umbrella next to the man. You can even have fun with this and try to guess what is happening in this image. So this is what my students did. Some of them said that the man is proposing to the woman. Other people had funny things like the woman is helping the man because he fell. So it was really interesting, the different observations that students made. So you can take any image and use this to both speak in your head, maybe on the way to work. If you're on the bus or train, you can do this activity in your head, think in your head, or you can practice speaking out loud. So are you going to practice this activity? If you are, put I'm committed, because I want to know that you're committed to practicing this activity, and I want you to be committed because I know the results that you're going to get are going to make you so confident, so happy, and so proud. Number 4, a daily summary. Now, this is an activity that you should start doing regardless, because preparing a daily summary is a great way to reflect on the day and ask yourself, what areas am I very proud of? What areas could I improve on? And this is just a great thing to do for your overall personal development, but we'll focus on how this activity can help you train your brain to think and speak in English. Well, the same thing that we talked about before. You can think these activities in your head, and if you are in a public place, this is a great time to just think the activities. If you are in a more private place, then you can say it out loud, and always remember the option is there to record yourself speaking. And with your daily summary, of course, you can summarize your day. You can talk about the best part of your day, the worst part of your day, 3 things you're grateful for, 3 things you're proud of, 3 things you want to improve. And the best part is you don't need to summarize your whole day, so you don't need to do this at night. Maybe your nights are very busy getting your kids ready for school or preparing for work the next day. So you could do this activity every day at noon, at lunchtime, and you can summarize your morning. So the daily summary doesn't have to be your entire day. You could summarize your morning, you could summarize a meeting at work, you could summarize your evening, Or you can do this multiple times a day. So you could summarize your morning and then summarize your evening. So you have the opportunity to do this twice a day. Whatever works best for you, the more you practice, the faster you'll get results. I have 2 bonus tips for you. Bonus tip number 1, surround yourself in English as much as you can. Ask yourself, what can I do to make my environment more English? Can you change the settings on your phone or your computer? Can you start listening to English music? Can you start watching English TV shows? What can you do that's easy for you to do to make your environment more English? Can you put labels on all the items in a room or your entire house and their English labels? So think about one thing that you can do to make your environment more English, because of course, the more you surround yourself with the language, the more that your brain will absorb that language. And bonus tip number 2, the most important, is be patient. This is not going to dramatically change your English overnight, but in 7 days, you will see some results. In 14 days, you will see some results. In 30 days, you will see some results. But if you take those results from the 7 days, 14 days, and 30 days, guess what? The result is a lot bigger than you may realize. And that's only 30 days. Imagine you do these 4 very simple, free activities that only take a few minutes, and you do these activities every day for 90 days. Imagine the results that are possible. So be patient. Can you do that for me? Can you be patient? Well, if you can, put yes, 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 put yes, yes, yes in the comments. Now, I have an entire video to help you prepare to speak in English, so make sure you watch it right now.